Man. Welcome to Butcher Block Horror Podcast, where we exhume horror movies from the past and carve into what makes them so delectable. I'm Kane.
I'm JD.
And I'm Joe.
And today, we're talking about puppeteering and horror.
Puppeteering and horror!
Yep.
All right, so this will kind of be all over the place because there's a lot to talk about.
Right.
We'll do our best to keep it in an organized fashion, but no promises. If you enjoy the taste of these feasts of fright, then give us a follow at your favorite podcasting site. Leave us a review. Tell us how you really feel. You can also stumble on over to WeGiveYouBrainworms.com. Just be careful of your dark mode settings, because if you have them set wrong on your browser, our already less than professional website will look even worse.
Yeah, we did our best.
Womp womp.
Anyway, that's where you can find the link to our Patreon and directly support the show. There's even a link to our Funky Fresh Discord server. If you're YouTubing us, please like, subscribe, and click the bell.
Smash that bell.
All right, I'm going to throw a disclaimer out. You guys all right with that?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to have to hear it first.
Okay, well, disclaimer. We at Butcher Block Horror Podcast aren't making fun of people.
Wait a minute. I am, and give me your lunch money, nerd.
Bully him. Bully Kane.
Not that kind of making fun of people.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Because phobias are actually terrible, life-altering, stopping things. So we're
True
just
that.
getting that out there now.
I have a phobia of bridges, just to be clear. When I drive over a bridge, I feel like I'm going to pass out.
That's okay.
It's horrible.
There's quite a few bridges where you're at
Yep.
that you have to drive over.
Well, I mean like big ones, like the Skyway. I've hit that and heading toward Indiana a few times, and I was just like, oh my God. And I feel myself starting to almost black out. And it's like fucking horrible.
I didn't know that about you.
It's not fun.
All right. Well,
Yup.
today we're talking about puppets and horror, and there's a lot of ground to cover. So I'm going to try to keep us on task. Joe, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of history?
No.
Joe?
Please, pretty please, with sugar on top.
No, don't talk to him like that. He doesn't. Joe, you get your ass in here and you tell us
Wait.
stuff.
Joe, what if I share my Halloween candy with you?
Okay.
How was your Halloween, by the way, everybody?
It was good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We gave out candy to the children.
Okay. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I got ditched by my kid.
Oh, man. All right, well,
That's because you're a nerd.
yeah, give me your lunch money.
Your kid's going to start bullying you. It's going to be very funny.
I don't think she is.
Well, as long as you're still handing out allowance, you're probably going to be safe from the bully.
All right. I guess I should talk about puppets or whatever.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, real quick, nerd bullshit dictionary definition, because we need context. If we're going to talk about puppets, we're going to talk about puppets.
Right.
Puppetry is the art of manipulating an inanimate object in such a way as to create the illusion that it's alive. Puppetry is an art form dating back at least 4,000 years. There's been puppets as long as there have been, human history in a lot of ways, which is interesting to me.
Right. Yeah.
Puppets and emperors and things like that. They kind of...
Yeah. And have been used as a form of entertainment, education, and even magical ritual.
Ooh.
Yeah. The oldest written references to puppets date back to the 5th century BC in the writings of Greek historian Herodotus. I'm not Greek. I probably mispronounced that guy's name.
Herodotus. Dum, dum, da, da, da.
Dude. Yeah.
Herodotus.
But I could have butchered it,
Right.
which is appropriate for this podcast.
Just following in my footsteps, that's all.
Yeah. But archaeological evidence suggests that they were used by the Egyptians much earlier.
Ooh. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot there. Again, this is like some sociological, anthropological shit in terms of the connection between puppetry and human culture that probably is more to get into than this podcast can support.
Right.
In the Middle Ages, puppetry was actually banned by the church because comedic puppet shows were mocking the Virgin Mary.
So puppets are of the devil is what you're saying.
Yeah. I think that's the conclusion that we're going to quickly come to, is that puppets are a tool of the Dark Lord.
Right.
And yeah, every culture in, all of human culture has some example of puppets.
Are there any specific ones that kind of come to mind?
There are, and I will get into that. But before that, I do want to reference the mechanical puppets of Jim Henson, which were a game changer for what became sort of modern puppeteering.
Okay.
Gotta shout out the Muppets.
Hey ho, Kermit Frog here.
Exactly. But yeah, the first and honestly most interesting example that I found are the Wayang shadow puppets of Indonesia, which look these things up. They're awesome.
Real quick, just for the listeners, not for me, because I can spell everything great. How would I spell that if I was going to look for it?
Wayang.
They sound dark and ominous.
Oh, they're awesome.
They are. They're super good.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Zoinks!
It's Indonesian.
Yep. Yeah, and they're made out of very thin wood and painted leather and placed in front of bright lights so that you see the shadow silhouette of these spindly, creepy things against the light. And they're really cool.
They are. They look awesome.
A more whimsical example is the Punch and Judy show, which originated in Italy in the 16th century. It's a comedic hand puppet performance. Comedic, I guess. Like, if you look at what a Punch and Judy puppet looks like, and like the kind of shit that goes into the story, I guess, it's like, this is meant to be funny for children, I suppose. But yeah, it's a hand puppet performance featuring Mr. Punch, who's like a mischief maker with a stick.
We know about Mr. Punch. We were introduced to him this season.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Dolls 1987, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets into trouble and he hits people with his stick, and he gets hit. He gets hit with the stick by other people. He hits a baby. Like, one of the stories, one of the classic Mr. Punch stories is his wife Judy puts him in charge of a baby, and he hits the baby with the stick, and he hits the wife with the stick, and the wife hits him with a stick.
Is it like our pain stick here on the butcher block?
Very similar. Less spiky, and there's not as much like barbed wire wrapped around it, I don't think.
Less like Lucille.
Yeah. There are variations of the story where his mischief gets him sent to the hangman.
Oh.
and he goes and he hits the devil with the stick.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
Mr. Punch has no chill, is what you're saying.
That's what's up. And
And it doesn't sound like he answers to anyone either if he's cracking the devil around.
no. And during the Second World War, he would hit Hitler with the stick.
Oh, damn, he took out Adolf?
Yeah. It's a weird thing.
Okay.
Well, if he whooped some Nazis' ass, I'm here for it.
Yeah, but he also beats his wife and his kid.
Yeah.
So don't be like Mr. Punch in that regard, but definitely beat Nazis with sticks. That's where
For
we're
sure.
at with this.
Yeah, that seems valid. And apparently it's very funny. Like, it's but the way that, like, reading it described on paper
Does it sound funny?
It sounds very upsetting.
All right, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. And then my final example, and kind of I feel like the thing that's going to come to mind when you say creepy puppets are the ventriloquist dummies that originated in the Victorian era. The carved, painted, wooden-headed fellas. Slappy from Goosebumps.
Right.
They freak people the fuck out.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is that did they always freak people out? Or
Yeah, that's the conversation to have, because I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Right.
Which honestly, going from, ventriloquist dummies, do we know like when they originated? And was there a specific place or?
You all right?
Yeah, I put cinnamon in my coffee, and it feels like fucking sawdust in the back of my throat.
That's bad.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
poor planning on your part.
Yeah, well, I thought that there would be enough coffee to facilitate that cinnamon down my esophagus, but I guess not.
Right, well, it happens. All right, so yeah. The first ventriloquist.
Yeah. It seems like the kind of, dummy style ventriloquism came out of the like spiritualist movement in the Victorian era. The whole like, oh, I can talk to the dead, that whole thing that was happening around then, where the performers would incorporate dolls or puppets as part of that kind of con to make them seem haunted.
So now, was there any type of connection from that to gastromancy?
Let's pretend like I know what that is.
So the name comes from Latin,
Yeah.
or to speak from the stomach, venter, belly.
Yeah.
So basically, the noises produced by the stomach were thought to be the voices of the unliving, who took up residence in the stomach of the ventriloquist.
I don't know of a direct connection between those two things, but it makes sense.
Right.
Because ventriloquism for entertainment seems to have evolved directly out of
Mysticism?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the ventriloquists would then interpret the sounds as they were thought to be able to speak to the dead.
Right. Yeah, it seems like there's a direct connection.
So
yeah.
that makes sense. And then from there, they were like, oh, I can make this wooden doll talk.
Wait, they can't?
No.
Oh.
Which then those kind of shows were kind of the precursor to puppets in film.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also the precursor to Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, so puppets in film. What do we know about that, JD?
All right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to roll it out like the red carpet that you'll walk down. So yeah, there was this movie in 1929 titled The GreatGabo. And it's not at all a horror film, but it's credited by a good number of sources to be one origin for creepy dolls / puppets on the silver screen. And it's sort of like it was an influential film to kind of take the ball and start rolling it forward into a future of a lot of basically the season 4 of the Butcher Black Horror podcast. So anyway, in most cases, creepy dolls in horror fall into one of two categories. They're either like some kid's toy or they're a ventriloquist dummy, basically.
Variations between that.
Right.
Yeah, and there's definitely a few exceptions. An example of that, and I'm going to touch down on this again later, but just to give this as an example, there was an anthology film called Trilogy of Terror in 1975, and one of the shorts in that presents a murderous doll that is actually a Zuni idol, or like a wooden statue, a carving of sorts, and contains the spirit of a hunter that is known as He Who Kills.
Kane is also known as that.
No, he's actually the one known as He Who Thrills.
Ooh, thanks.
You got it, buddy.
That's a thriller.
Hell yeah.
Bum, 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 bum.
Don't make me laugh like Vincent Price, mostly because I can't, but... Anyway, back to the ventriloquist puppet named Otto in The GreatGabo.
I've seen stills of that thing, and it's pretty creepy to look at, but...
Oh yeah, it's not cute at all.
I don't know if that's because my brain's been trained to be unnerved by puppets and dolls and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction would be, throw that motherfucker in a log splitter and just, or
It's just going to come back.
But so anyway, the Gabo in that film, he's like this magician / ventriloquist who, he's kind of a nut job. He's like a maniacal dickhead that he doesn't really like get along with anyone. He has a hard time. He struggles to form personal relationships with anyone, and pretty much just a giant asshole. Anyway, he used the puppet to verbally abuse people, basically, and get away with it.
And the doll is real creepy to look at.
Yeah, pretty creepy. But the ventriloquist Gabo, he does have a great talent in his ability to make this puppet talk, because he'll do it while he smokes or drinks or eats food, and he'll just kind of do his act. And he's good in the respect that he actually is able to convince people that the doll is real in some way.
Right.
The special effects artist who worked on the GreatGabo was Barney Wolf, born in 1894 and passed away at age 95 in 1989. And Wolf began his career in film in 1925. Had a pretty amazing reputation for his professionalism and just overall being an outstanding guy. And, he just kind of worked through several decades. He had a 50-year career, 150 films through the early golden era of filmmaking. I wasn't actually able to confirm that he created that puppet, but I'm sure because he was, in charge of the art direction and the special effects of the film, that he had commissioned them and then decided how to use the puppet as a prop. Wolf has 46 special effects credits, Didn't really seem to have much horror under his belt, but definitely some suspense, thriller, mystery type stuff. To be fair, though, in 1929, special effects artists did very different things in contrast to what's expected of them today. So the next film to pop up in this little origin story we're presenting is Dead of Night, and that was released in 1945, where we meet Hugo the puppet, who also happens to be a ventriloquist dummy. Hugo takes a huge step up in the creepy department, that's for sure. Definitely creepier looking than Otto. The film was an inspiration to director John Carpenter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and Dead of Night is actually another anthology horror film. And the segment within that we get to meet Hugo, that's titled The Ventriloquist's Dummy. And this film had 2 special effects artists in their art department, and again, I'm assuming that it wasn't clear whether either of these artists had physically produced the puppet, but I believe that they, again, probably had to commission some puppeteer to create it.
Right.
So anyway, those artists were Lionel Baines and Cliff Richardson.
Now, is it true that you actually have that puppet and it sleeps in your bed with you at night?
It actually sleeps under my bed.
Oh, sure.
Its voice, it's a little more clear in my head when there's a buffer between us.
Right, I get that.
Right then. So,
So yeah, and some of the guys here that were involved with these special effects back then, they were well-made individuals. This guy was born July 1904 in the UK, and he passed at age 91 in 1996. That's pretty hardcore. Baines had a huge career in cinema, pretty eclectic portfolio in film. So the other artist I'm going to mention is Cliff Richardson. He entered existence February of 1905 and left us at age 80 in December of 1985. Again, a massive career in film spanning several decades. And old Cliff, good old Uncle Cliffy, he was no stranger to horror films. He worked on a film that came out in 1960 called The City of the Dead, not to be confused with City of the Dead.
or City of the Living Dead.
Yeah, right. And so he was also a special effects artist on Dead of Night, 1945.
Cool.
So we skip a few decades. The whole puppet thing seemed to kind of make its way out of the limelight for a bit until The Twilight Zone. It's kind of a horror sci-fi adjacent type of show.
Old Rod Sterling, right?
Yeah, super, very cool. I used to love watching the reruns of that. But anyway, in season 3, episode 33, there was this episode titled The Dummy. And then later on, there was another one titled Caesar and Me. And then there was another Twilight Zone episode called Living Doll, and that one had a doll in there named Talkie Tina.
So real quick, I just wanted to point this out. It doesn't have anything to do with puppets, but Rod Sterling actually got his start in Cincinnati at Crosley's WLW way back.
Oh, that's cool.
And is that still a radio station current?
Oh yeah, 700 WLW still exists. I mean, the Crosleys aren't involved with it anymore because they're all gone. But
Right.
yeah, so the Twilight Zone puppet. Sorry to have thrown you off your game there.
No, that's cool. All of these episodes, though, that I mentioned, they're all important because they set the table for future films. The Dummy, that puppet's name was Willie, and I got a little intel on who created that. It's a masterful puppet maker in the 1940s named Ravello Petey.
I don't like the name Willie when it's attached to pretty much anything.
It gives you the willies?
Ugh.
Anyway, the same dummy was used in the episode Caesar and Me. And this puppet dwells today in the David Copperfield Museum and Library of the Conjuring Arts in Las Vegas.
Nice.
Yeah, I would like to visit that and check out some creepy puppets.
Are we going to touch on the puppet in the movie Mac and Me during this episode?
No, we're not.
I think it's inappropriate to touch on puppets.
Yeah, especially that thing.
I don't want to talk about Mac and Me, which is basically an hour and a half long Coca-Cola and McDonald's commercial.
Yeah, like a bad ripoff of E.T.
Yeah.
that doesn't understand what made E.T. good.
No, it doesn't understand a lot of things.
So there's a second puppet in that the David Copperfield Museum and Library
JG
of
is having none of our shit.
Conjuring Arts. And that puppet kind of showed up near the end of that Caesar and Me episode of The Twilight Zone. And that puppet was created by a puppeteer named Cliff Robertson, not to be confused with special effects artist Cliff Richardson.
Do people confuse them a lot?
Well,
or are you just taking precautionary measures?
I'm taking, I don't want to
Can never be too
be
careful.
confused. Richardson and Robertson, they're both Cliff, so I just figured, okay.
Fair enough.
The puppet's name was Effigy, and as you know, effigy is a word used to describe a very lifelike, life-size representation of a specific person. And as Joe had mentioned earlier, it has all kinds of background to it. So,
which kind of leads a little bit into the Uncanny Valley. So that's a hypothesis that was formed in the 70s that predicts that an entity appearing almost human will risk eliciting cold, eerie feelings in viewers.
Which you have to wonder why that's an evolutionary feature. Like, what at some point looked like us that we were afraid of,
that was eating us.
Yeah, that's just baked into our brains now.
Well, I mean, I wonder honestly if it's like a Neolithic type situation where the Neanderthals weren't eradicated by violence.
Right.
they were basically bred out
right
by what would become modern human beings.
Sure.
So I wonder if that's just like a and again, it's a hypothesis. It's not like there's a ton of studies that are on it. But
were we possibly being cannibalized by Neanderthals?
I don't think that's what it is. I think it's, at least this is, I don't know. My thoughts are that we have this revulsion to things that look like humans and act like humans, but just are slightly off because of the fact that, at least it's a possibility that it's because of the fact that, the Neanderthals were essentially bred out.
Right.
Like we interbred with them and basically wiped them out that way. So maybe that's like a shared trait, genetic trait now.
Could be.
Where when we see something that looks human and kind of acts human and it's like almost human, we're immediately disgusted by it because we don't want to be bred out. Or it could have possibly been a series of cockroach-like bugs that were genetically created and altered to get rid of a cockroach population because of a plague that was ravaging the children of New York City, which that was a long tangent just to describe Guillermo del Toro's Mimic.
Right. Great movie, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that has nothing to do with puppets, but the Uncanny Valley, it's also tied into automatonophobia, which is the fear of human-like figures.
Automatopoeia?
Automatonophobia. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't claim to have like a deep understanding of this stuff, but
yeah, you can barely even read as far as I understand.
It's true. But the main thing that I'm trying to suggest is that I don't know. I interrupted JD.
To just not really make a point?
To not make a point. I just wanted to put a Guillermo del Toro thing in there. And I don't know why. JD, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. It was fun and exciting to listen to, I have to say.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead, though, and interject with some... I'm just going to continue doing my job. So, in 1964, came another doll named Hugo in a film called Devil Doll. It's a little bit of a rip on Dead of Night, but still received decently at the time. And this movie is a little bit better known for making its way onto an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Nice.
And a fairly recent episode of Svengoolie, who we know and love as a Chicago icon and a horror film host. I'm a big fan.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, this doll, he was likely brought into the fold by a special effects artist named Stan Shields. Shields was born July 1911 in the UK and passed 1989. Shields was no stranger to special effects or art direction in sci-fi, horror, and murder mystery films. He worked on a film titled Invasion in 1965. It was a slinky little alien number.
I like how you described that movie like you would describe
some lingerie.
A dress or something that you were trying on.
Well,
So it is funny to me that, with Devil Doll and Dead of Night and the GreatGabo and stuff like that, like those movies focused on the ventriloquist being evil.
Mhm.
Like it was always the guy with the hand up the ass that was the problem, not
Right.
the actual dummy.
Do you see me as being evil since I'll frequently stuff my hand up your asses?
Wait, what?
That was a really bad joke.
That's all right. We can edit it out.
It's better off that way.
I'm not going to. I'm leaving that in.
No, that's good. That's fine. Whatever.
So should I just stop and turn my microphone around, or do you think I should keep reading?
No, you're good.
I mean, I think that we need to have a longer conversation about why your hand's up my ass.
Well,
And how he doesn't notice it. That's the
Yeah.
questions that I have.
I have tiny hands. It's one of the reasons why I'm afraid to go to the beach.
That's fair.
What? Okay. Okay. So
Don't you listen to Captain Beefheart? No?
a trout.
Trout mask replica?
Sorry, my brain just shorted out. Trout
Mouth?
mat.
Shark mouth drop bear.
That was my nickname back in junior high, old Trout Mouth.
Nice.
I enjoy trout mask replica, but I'm a bigger fan of swordfish trombones.
That's because I was spitting hooks, in my hip hop group. No, I'm just kidding. I never was in a hip hop group.
What the fuck is happening?
We're deviating off course. Let's go back. Let's get back quick.
It's a subtle detour, but we'll be back. Here we go. Devil Doll was important because it set the stage for films like Child's Play, because in Devil Doll, someone's soul was transferred into a doll. And also, the next point of our convo, on to 1972 with another anthology film titled Asylum, and a bit within a bit.
I always like the bits within the bits.
Yes.
Those are my favorite bits.
So anyway, the segment in Asylum, it refers to the doll as more of like a mannequin type of thing.
Okay.
But basically in this film, an inmate is a doctor who figured out the key to immortality by transferring his consciousness into a mechanical doll. And
I don't know if I'd want to live forever in that state.
right, because like what happens when the mechanics of that doll seizes and then you're just like trapped?
Yeah.
Ugh, immortality is just awful to even consider.
It sounds a little frightening, yeah.
I get
But
bored
I'd much
pretty
prefer
quick.
the vampire version of immortality than
Right.
the stuck in a wooden doll version of immortality.
Well, this particular one was like almost like a tiny little android-like thing, so I don't know if
Okay.
that would make it any better for you, but
no,
doubtful.
it wouldn't.
So in 1975, as I mentioned earlier, we had the Trilogy of Terror and the Zuni statue who embodies the spirit of a killing warrior/hunter. Also in 1975, and this is kind of significant to the discussion of creepy dolls, I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in. We have Dario Argento's Deep Red, a.k.a. Profondo Rosso. And it's not at all a doll film. However, there is an extremely creepy doll in that movie, very consistent visually / influential to films to come in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. The doll in Deep Red is significant due to the fact that it resembles or is likely a precursor stylistically to Jigsaw or Billy from Dead Silence or Annabelle, just any of those films. The effort to make the doll very creepy looking was influential.
Yeah, it almost has like a baby's mouth. Like it's pretty creepy to look at.
And almost kind of like a clown paint on its face. So
Right.
it kind of taps into another irrational fear of people and the fear of clowns, that sort of thing. It kind of takes the two and sort of pushes them together and gets a little wackadoodle-doo. So in 1978, we have a film called Magic with a doll named Fats. And that doll was voiced and portrayed by Anthony Hopkins. And it also bears a creepy resemblance to Anthony. The doll is presented as his psychopathic alter ego. And the special effects artist for Magic was Bob McDonald Jr. There was also a ventriloquist consultant named Dennis Allwood involved with the film. So all of this leads to the 80s, where murderous dolls and horror really begin to get their pants off and bang into the future of horror.
Wait, what?
And
Yeah, so basically up until, I'm sure there were other offshoots of creepy dolls in movies,
yeah, absolutely.
but up until Dolls, which we covered this season of the
Mhm. Right.
1987 movie, there was generally a person connected to the doll, like
Right.
a person that was controlling the doll and using the doll, right?
And these dolls like Mr. Punch or Chucky, they're filled with,
Hate.
more of the later representation of the horror doll, where there's a soul or some
Right.
evil energy inside the doll, and the doll's acting on its own, sentient shittiness.
It's still doing the will of like a greater master in dolls, the two wizard/witches.
A wizard!
But the dolls are acting on their own. They're making their own judgment calls, which I enjoyed dolls a lot, but it didn't really do the job that Child's Play did. Child's Play removed the ventriloquist from the dummy completely. And,
Right.
That's where the stage gets set. But
And Chucky's personality and his antics and demeanor, all of that, just really communicated that he was his own thing, doing
exactly
reigning terror.
That's so when we were talking about doing this episode, we were trying to figure out how we wanted to kind of organize it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was I tried to discover more about the psychology behind fear of dolls, like that kind of a thing. And, the Uncanny Valley is a good starting point. But the more I looked into it, the more it started to be revealed to me that it was very much so a chicken or the egg scenario, because there's not a lot of conversation about people being scared of dolls or scared of puppets until we had these movies like the GreatGabo and Dead of Night, until those movies came out. And then we started to see people being unnerved by dolls or talking about their grandma's porcelain dolls.
Right. Maybe that's just
you
because
know.
the internet wasn't invented yet and people couldn't talk about things.
I guess that's possible, but they still had conversations with each other, Joe, before.
I don't think that's true.
They still, interacted before Facebook.
I don't think that's accurate.
You would be wrong, and you're allowed to be wrong, because
I'm not convinced that before AOL Instant Messenger became available that people actually talked to one another.
oh, so that's a weird place to be, but that's fine. You're welcome to be there. I know that before AOL existed, I talked to people. I interacted with others.
Mhm.
Before the internet, you had to meet people to find new bands. You had to get like magazines and stuff like that to discover underground music.
Like Hit Parader?
More like Carpe Noctem,
Enemy.
Propaganda, like that kind of stuff. Like that's and then making friends with people who were older than you that knew more than you
Sure.
about the scene. So, I mean, people did talk, but that's not what we're talking about right now, Joe. What we're talking about right now
Spooky fucking dolls.
is that being scared of dolls. So I touched on it a little bit, automatanophobia, and a subset of that, which is pediophobia, the fear of dolls. Those things are actually fairly rare. Pediophobia, even more so. So being creeped out by a doll is not a phobia. Phobia it actually has an effect on your life in significant ways. To have a phobia or the fear of dolls requires you to basically be shut down by the dolls. Seeing them, gives you panic attacks, nausea, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
And that doesn't really start to show up until the media existed. So there's a good argument, because there's not a lot of well-defined cases of pediophobia. There's a good argument that movies like Child's Play and Puppet Master, well, less Puppet Master, because there's not a lot of puppets in that movie.
Yeah, nobody's afraid of those things.
Because they're not really there.
No. So you think that fear of puppets and dolls is like a mimetic thing, more so than an actual ingrained fear?
Yeah. I mean, it's so the automatanophobia, which is the fear of human-like figures. Like, you're not scared of people, you're scared of things that look like people,
Right.
like mannequins and, some dummies, like some ventriloquist dummies. Like that is, Uncanny Valley territory. And that could make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. The I Feel Fantastic video, which I reference at every opportunity.
I really hate that video a lot. It's really unnerving to watch.
That video's great.
But the main suggestion is that by watching scary media that has creepy dolls at its center, you're basically programming yourself to feel uneasy around dolls. So My first memory of being unnerved by a doll was a Pee Wee Herman doll with a pull string on the back of it. And that doll was given to us after we had seen Child's Play.
Right.
So, like my brother had a My Buddy doll and that thing got absolutely destroyed shortly after we watched Child's Play.
Mhm.
But it wasn't a factor. It wasn't something that made me nervous or, gave me the willies before I saw those movies. So for my own anecdotal evidence, I guess, to suggest that that's actually the case. I wasn't scared of dolls. I was fine with dolls. They didn't bother me until I watched movies that had evil dolls in them. And from that point on, dolls were uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Like even today, seeing the collection of creepy dolls that my baby mama has, those things are unnerving. And I remember when we first started dating, she had this shelf that went around right underneath her ceiling.
Mhm.
And there were just loads of these creepy ass dolls sitting on them. And it was difficult to be in that room for me. I wasn't shut down by it, but it was definitely like, ugh, this is gross. I don't like those things. They're staring at me.
How wise do you think it is, though, to let her know of your fear? Because I think next time you piss her off, she can easily just sneak into your bedroom and surround you.
I mean, we're going on knowing each other for 22 years. Me being uncomfortable with her doll collection.
She'll surround you with it while you're sleeping, and you'll wake up to it. And
I mean, that would be funny.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting gag, so to speak. But there is a distinct possibility. I said it earlier that the GreatGabo started us down the direction of being scared of dolls.
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Or at some point during prehistory, there was a tiny race of humanoid creatures that would hunt and devour people.
I guess that works. This is very educational, actually.
I learned nothing.
Yeah, but you purposefully try not to learn things.
That's true.
I'm not sure why you're so against educating yourself, but, more power to you.
My fear is that if I learn things, then my view of the world will change, and I can't have that.
All right, well, glad that happened. Good thing we had that conversation. Do we have anything else that we want to kind of throw out there?
Oh, not so much.
Watch the I Feel Fantastic video on YouTube.
No, don't do that.
I don't know. It sounds like maybe they should.
I'm actually asking a serious question. Do you think we've covered everything?
I do. I think we've covered our bases.
All right. So if you have some insight into puppets or puppets in horror and would like to share those with us, feel free to do so. You can find a Yell at Us button at WeGiveYouBrainworms.com.
If you put your hand up someone's butt, put on a rubber glove because there's a global pandemic happening.
What? Don't do that. What?
Yeah. Let me go back and do this again. You can find the Yell at Us button at WeGiveYouBrainworms.com. It's conveniently placed on the same page as our Patreon and Discord link.
It's true.
You can also check us out at youtube.com Brainworms Presents. If you do that, make sure you like, subscribe, and click the bell.
Click
because
that bell.
Joe gets a little blast of dopamine,
Yeah, I like
and
it.
JD gets his gumball. Next week will be the season recap. And then I think it's safe to say that, even though the season recap's coming up, that we're going to be taking a break after the recap.
Right.
We're going to be taking about a month off.
Yep.
I'll still probably be posting a few things while we're waiting. Nothing too crazy.
Mostly nudes.
I'm not posting nudes, Joe. We've talked about this too many times to have to talk about it again.
And he said nothing too crazy, so.
Although if you miss us during the break, you can search for Count_Canula on YouTube and Twitch.tv and get some more Kane content. And occasionally I'm in the chat being obnoxious.
It's true.
Or come visit me at the Butcher Black Instagram page.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right, well, let's go ahead and stop this right now.
Can't make me. Don't stop till you get enough.
Give me your lunch money, nerd.